I'm Dr. Danny Lehnert, physical therapist and owner of Eclipse Wellness in Sterling, Virginia. And I work with a lot of baseball players. And I wanted to talk specifically about elbow injuries in baseball players. And obviously, we're seeing a huge rise in elbow injuries, sometimes with younger players. And I want to talk about what I think are reasons for that and ways we can prevent that in the future. So, the first thing to understand is that a lot of times as physical therapists, we like to blame a lot of different things with baseball players. So, we like to blame, oh, they're throwing too hard, their velo's too great, they're playing too many games, they're not taking breaks, things like that. I think that those are frankly lazy excuses. Most of the athletes I work with are trying to play college baseball or higher levels. And so they're going to want to throw as hard as they can because that's how they're going to get to go to school. So it's kind of silly for us as physical therapists to wag our fingers and say, if you don't throw so hard, you're not going to hurt your elbow. Because that's something that this kid's dreamed of since they were 5 years old, is playing college baseball. And who am I to say, oh, don't throw hard? Similarly, in this area in Northern Virginia, high school tryouts start in the end of February. A lot of kids are obviously throwing before then. You got to start throwing in January. And then the season runs to the end of October, and maybe later, depending on when showcases are, especially if they're in the South, and you're trying to get noticed by schools. So the idea of, oh, just play less games and throw less hard, that's crazy. Athletes can't do that, and it's silly of us to suggest it. What can be changed is working our elbow muscles, so our forearm muscles, our biceps, and our triceps and everything to get a little bit stronger to absorb a little more force and prevent elbow injuries in the future. Now, I'm primarily going to focus on the forearm today because I think that's an area that's really underloaded. And I want to point to another kind of case study that shows that getting stronger works. Now, I used to see, even when I first started physical therapist, a lot more shoulder injuries in baseball players, and those have gone down a lot. Now, I think a lot of the reason for that is because we've gotten a lot smarter about training the shoulder, whether that's heavy weights in the weight room or J-bands or plyo balls or things like that before we start throwing. Athletes are a lot better at warming up their shoulder now, even tubing, things like that, than they were before, but we've kind of missed the boat on the elbow. So I think that one day we're going to look back and say, oh, it was crazy, we weren't loading the forearm more, we weren't doing more with the elbow. So I just want to talk about a few strategies and exercises and techniques I use as a physical therapist to rehab athletes from elbow injuries and also help prevent them in the future. So before we talk about how to train and prevent elbow injuries or even rehab elbow injuries in baseball players, it's important we understand what causes elbow injuries. So there are two things, in my opinion, that typically cause an elbow injury. It's either an acute trauma or a chronic trauma. This is common of most injuries. So with an acute trauma, what I'm talking about is maybe you didn't warm up so well, or maybe you're out on the mound and you're throwing and it's the second or third pitch and you really want to blow it by someone, you really reach back and throw as hard as you can. Ooh, I felt something in my elbow. Or you're doing like a heavy long toss or something before you warmed up fully, bang, feel it in my elbow. Chronic or more fatigue induced is going to be, I've thrown 100 pitches, my forearms get a little tired, arms getting a little tired, I think I can throw another inning, and I go out there and boom, that was too much for me. Now I have an elbow injury because it wasn't one pitch that did it, it was wearing it down, and then that pitch did it. Now, typically, a lot of injuries are honestly going to be a combination of both, especially in younger athletes who are doing tournaments where I'll see fatigue built up where they have a 3-day tournament, and coaches still do this. They'll pitch the kid on Friday for an inning or two, pitch him on Saturday for an inning or two, so they come into Sunday, the big game, they've already got some fatigue built up because they've pitched, and then they go out there and they try to rear back and throw in the championship game. Ooh, now my elbow hurts. That was an acute issue because they tried to rear back and throw, but also a chronic issue because their workload wasn't managed properly throughout the weekend. So when we're training, we want to look at those two different things. If it's a fatigue issue, we want to work on endurance, so longer holds, things like that. If it's more of an acute issue, we want to work on absorbing power, creating power through the arm, because throwing a baseball, you're coming from back here all the way through in a very violent movement, and so you want to train the forearm, elbow muscles, everything like that to absorb power. So I want to take a quick look at some exercises I like to use to train both of them. And in most cases, I do end up training both, unless there's a clear issue of, oh, it's an endurance thing or, oh, it's an acute thing. So the first exercise I want to talk about when you're trying to prevent elbow pain in throwing athletes is more endurance-based exercises because they're kind of easier to conceptualize. So the first one I'll give people, especially if it's post-injury, is just simple ball squeezes. So using a plyo ball or a tennis ball or anything like that, just working on good hard squeezes, holding, relaxing, things like that, doing that throughout the day. You'd be surprised how much muscle stress you can put on it with very little breakdown just by squeezing and doing isometric movements like that and holding. It's a great way to warm up these muscles, get them ready for throwing, get them ready for everything else. Now, that's pretty easy for the average person, so we usually progress pretty quickly. The next one I love is a farmer's carry. So a farmer's carry is going to be using a heavier weight at your side and just walking up and down through a preset area. So this is a really good one because you can scale it easily. You can do heavier weight, you can walk longer. What I love to have athletes do is, move the thumb out of the way, because the thumb is not an important finger when it comes to pitching. Obviously, think about pitching, you never push with your thumb. Those muscles of your thumb don't really cross the elbow. And then you can even play around with, 3 fingers, 2 fingers, things like that, to really stress those muscles that run up into here, and that you're obviously also using to throw a baseball. The best exercise for endurance has the highest barrier of entry because it's most difficult, and that's going to be a hang. So if you have a pull-up bar or anything like that, you can just dead hang from that. You can do one arm. You can use, if you're at a gym and they don't have a good pull-up bar, you can just set a barbell up on a squat rack and use that. You can hang from the front, you can hang from the side, you can do different things, just really working on holding and squeezing through that forearm. If you get really good, take the thumb off like we were talking about. You can try different fingers. You can try one arm. There's a million ways to scale it similarly. So it should give you something to always keep working on, because the goal of these exercises isn't just, oh, I'm in pain, I do them and then I feel better and go back to my normal routine. These should be things that you can continuously use to challenge yourself. You can always grab a heavier weight for a farmer's carry. You can always hang longer. You can take an arm off. There's a million ways to scale these, and it gives you great progressions to work on, even when you're feeling quote unquote healthy, to keep that elbow nice and strong, and it should honestly help with your performance. So next I want to talk about how I train athletes to absorb quick stress or more acute trauma. So we're really good at plyometrics with lower body athletes, so like runners, jumpers, things like that. We know a bunch of jumps and things we can do. When it comes to baseball players, we often neglect that, which is silly because, like I talked about, you're obviously going from a layback position here quickly through. That's a really quick movement, similar to a jump, similar to a sprint, things like that. So we want to try to mimic that in different ways. So if we're really trying to isolate the forearm, I'll just have people start with ball flips. Normally I have them sitting, so this is supported, and just flipping up and down, working on catching and releasing. What I want is the wrist to go through the full range of motion and then come up as quickly as possible, because that's preparing for the quick release of a ball. You don't want to just do that. You're losing all the energy that you're gaining. Similarly, you want to go through the full range of motion, so you don't want it to just be here. You want it to be all the way down and all the way up. And obviously you can use heavier balls to do that. The next one I like is using the biceps a little bit more. So you can use a small bar, or you can use a full barbell if you're comfortable with it and want to try it. And all we're doing is you're coming up into a bicep curl and then dropping the weight and catching it, dropping and catching it. So we're working on absorbing the force and stabilizing through there, similar to we would if we were releasing a ball coming through there. The last exercise I like is pretty advanced. Imagine you're hanging doing a row there. You can do a row, and same thing, drop and catch yourself. You can find videos of this online. It's kind of hard to demonstrate given my setup here, but something like that would be another one that you could scale of using your body weight if this is too easy for you, using the bicep and everything like that. So those are some simple plyometric exercises to teach people to absorb force quickly, similar to when you're throwing a baseball. Now, when we're talking about preventing elbow injuries, and we're talking about training the forearm and bicep and tricep muscles, it's important to also consider recovery. So as a physical therapist, I'd be remiss not to mention, the use of scraping, cupping, dry needling, modalities like Mark Pro, things like that. And even just good quality manual therapy, massage. You can use a lacrosse ball at home, something to keep those muscles loose and flexible, because what we want is quicker recovery so we can train harder and we can throw more. So if you, go to the gym and you're able to massage, cause this to relax, and you can train even harder a couple days later, that's how you're going to get stronger versus going back a couple days saying, oh, I'm a little sore, I can't do as much. So we really want to maximize recovery from a throwing perspective, but also a lifting perspective, so we can continue to get stronger. So that's where physical therapy, manual therapy, things like that can come in to help aid your recovery. All right, so that was a very brief look at some exercises, techniques, manual therapy, stuff like that I use to help my athletes recover from elbow injuries, but also hopefully prevent them in the future. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of some things you can implement on your own. The biggest thing, get as strong as you can, whether that's endurance, whether that's acute power and everything like that. That's going to make you more resistant, because you're going to want to keep chasing higher velo. You're going to want to keep playing games. So we might as well make you as strong as possible to make that happen. If you have any questions, let me know. My email's down below. Share this video with someone if it was helpful, and I appreciate you watching. Thanks.